Those 4 words changed everything. The text message arrived on a cold December afternoon while I was sitting alone in my apartment overlooking downtown Chicago. At first, I thought my mother was joking. She wasn't. I read the message again, and again, and again. Please don't come to New Year's this year. Your uncle's billionaire friends will be there. I don't want any awkward situations. I stared at my phone. My chest tightened. Not because I was angry, because I wasn't surprised. For most of my life, my family treated me like the disappointing child. The child who never measured up. The child who was never good enough. The child they were embarrassed to talk about. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 32 years old. And if you had asked my family who was most likely to fail, every single one of them would have pointed at me. What they didn't know was that everything they believed about me was wrong. And New Year's Eve was about to prove it. Growing up, my older brother Michael was the star of the family. Straight A's, football captain, popular, confident, successful. At least that's what everyone thought. Meanwhile, I was quiet, introverted, obsessed with computers and business ideas. While other kids played outside, I spent hours learning how companies worked. Nobody cared, nobody noticed, and honestly, nobody believed in me, especially my mother. She never said she loved Michael more. She didn't have to. Her actions said it for her. When Michael won an award, the entire family celebrated. When I achieved something, the room became silent. Eventually, I stopped expecting approval. After college, things became worse. Michael joined my uncle's company. The family praised him constantly. Every holiday dinner turned into another speech about Michael's future. Meanwhile, I launched a small technology startup from a tiny apartment. The business struggled. Money disappeared quickly. Friends told me to quit. Family members laughed behind my back. My uncle once looked me directly in the eyes and said, "Some people are meant to run companies. Some people aren't." The entire table laughed. I laughed too. But inside, I never forgot it. The next 5 years were brutal. There were nights when I slept in my office, weeks when I barely earned enough to pay rent, months when failure seemed inevitable. But every setback taught me something. Every mistake made me stronger. And slowly, very slowly, things began changing. Clients started arriving. Investors became interested. Revenue increased. The company grew, then grew again, and again. But I never told my family, not because I wanted revenge, because I knew they wouldn't believe me. 3 years later, my company signed a major international contract. The deal changed everything. Within months, our valuation exploded. Investors from New York, California, and Europe began contacting us. The business magazines started writing articles. Industry leaders wanted meetings. For the first time in my life, people took me seriously. Yet my family remained completely unaware. Whenever my mother called, she asked the same questions. "Have you found a real job yet?" I usually smiled and changed the subject. It was easier that way. Then December arrived, and with it came the annual Carter family New Year's party. Every year my uncle hosted it at his massive estate outside Chicago. Politicians attended, business leaders attended, celebrities occasionally appeared, and this year would be bigger than ever. According to family gossip, several billionaire investors were expected to attend. The entire family was excited, everyone except me, because I had just received a message telling me not to come. The text from my mother continued, "I'm only trying to protect you." Protect me? From what? Embarrassment? Judgment? People discovering I wasn't successful? The irony was almost funny, if only she knew. That evening, I received a phone call from my cousin Emma. She sounded nervous. "Did Aunt Sarah really tell you not to come?" I laughed. "Apparently." There was silence. Then Emma said something strange. "Daniel, there's something you should know." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" She hesitated, then answered. "Your uncle has been bragging about introducing everyone to a young tech entrepreneur at the party." I frowned. "So?" Emma sighed. "The entrepreneur is you." I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "One of the billionaire guests invested in your company last year. They know exactly who you are. Suddenly, everything made sense. My uncle had no idea. My mother had no idea. My brother had no idea. But some of the most powerful guests at the party did, and if they recognized me, the truth would come out. All of it. That night, I sat alone looking out the window. Snow covered the city streets below. Cars moved through the darkness. And for the first time in years, I thought about my family. Not with anger, not with bitterness, with sadness. Because despite everything, I still wanted their respect. I still wanted them to believe in me. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. At least not willingly. Sometimes people only change when reality forces them to. And reality was coming. Fast. 2 days later, New Year's Eve finally arrived. The mansion was glowing with lights. Luxury cars filled the driveway. Guests in designer suits and expensive dresses walked through the entrance. Inside, champagne flowed. Music played. Conversations echoed through the halls. Everyone looked important. Everyone looked successful. Everyone looked confident. And then, a black luxury SUV pulled into the driveway. The driver stepped out, opened the rear door, and I emerged. Within seconds, several billionaire guests froze. One of them immediately smiled, then loudly said something that caused the entire room to turn and stare, including my family. "Daniel Carter, you're here." And suddenly, everything changed. The moment the billionaire investor called my name, the entire room went silent. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. And for the first time that evening, my family looked genuinely confused. My mother stared at me. My uncle stared at me. Even Michael looked shocked. Because none of them understood why one of the wealthiest men in the room seemed excited to see me. The billionaire investor walked directly toward me. Then he smiled. A real smile. The kind people reserve for someone they genuinely respect. "Daniel, it's good to finally see you again." We shook hands. Around us, dozens of guests watched closely. Some recognized me immediately. Others were trying to figure out why everyone suddenly seemed interested in the guy who wasn't supposed to be there. Then another investor joined us. Then another. And another. Within minutes, several influential business leaders were standing around me, talking, laughing, discussing projects, as if I belonged there, as if I was one of them. Because in reality, I was. My family simply didn't know it yet. Across the room, I noticed my mother watching nervously. She looked completely lost. Nothing about the situation made sense to her. A few days earlier, she had practically begged me not to come. Now some of the most powerful people at the party were treating me like an honored guest. Then came the moment that changed everything. One of the investors raised his glass. The room became quiet. He smiled and said, "I think everyone here should know something." My stomach tightened. I knew exactly where this was heading. The investor continued. 3 years ago, I invested in a small technology company. People listened carefully. It turned out to be one of the smartest investments of my entire career. Guests exchanged curious looks. Then he pointed directly at me. "The founder is standing right here." The room exploded with whispers. My uncle's smile disappeared instantly. The investor wasn't finished. Today, that company is valued at nearly $800 million. The room became completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. Several guests looked stunned. Others looked impressed. But nobody looked more shocked than my family, especially my mother. I could see her trying to process the number. $800 million. The son she constantly underestimated. The son she was embarrassed to invite. The son she believed wasn't successful. That son had quietly built one of the fastest-growing companies in the industry. My uncle suddenly walked toward us. His face looked pale, very pale. For years he had treated me like a failure. For years he had mocked my business. For years he had acted as though I would never become anything. And now, reality was standing directly in front of him. "Daniel." His voice sounded weak. "You never told us." I almost laughed. Never told them? For years nobody asked. For years nobody cared. For years they had already decided who I was. People who think they know everything rarely stop to ask questions. Before I could answer, another guest joined the conversation. A famous venture capitalist, someone my uncle admired enormously. The man smiled and shook my hand. Your company is all over Silicon Valley right now. My uncle looked like he had been struck by lightning, because for the first time in his life, someone he admired respected me more than him. Meanwhile, Michael stood quietly in the corner, watching everything. At first, I felt sorry for him. Then I noticed something. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't confused. He wasn't shocked. He looked nervous, extremely nervous. And suddenly, something felt wrong, very wrong. Hours later, I stepped outside onto the balcony for fresh air. Snow was falling gently. The city lights sparkled in the distance. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. Then someone opened the balcony door. It was Emma, my cousin, the same cousin who warned me about the party. She looked worried. Daniel, there's something else you need to know. Immediately, I felt my stomach tighten. What happened? Emma hesitated, then lowered her voice. Michael has been talking about you for years. I frowned. What do you mean? Emma looked around carefully to make sure nobody could hear. Then she spoke. Remember those investors who rejected your company 4 years ago? I nodded. Of course I remembered. Those rejections nearly destroyed my business. They cost me millions, maybe more. Emma took a deep breath. Michael contacted some of them. I froze. What? He told them you were inexperienced. My heart started pounding. Emma continued. He told them your company wasn't trustworthy. The cold winter air suddenly felt even colder. For years, I believed those investors rejected me because my business wasn't ready. Now I was learning something entirely different. Someone had been working against me behind the scenes. Someone I trusted. Someone in my own family. Are you sure? Emma nodded slowly. I found emails. The words hit me like a truck. Emails. Evidence. Proof. Suddenly, dozens of strange memories started making sense. Deals that mysteriously collapsed. Investors who changed their minds. Partnerships that disappeared at the last minute. At the time, I blamed bad luck. Now I wasn't so sure. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the reason. Jealousy. Pure jealousy. Michael couldn't stand the possibility of me succeeding, because if I succeeded, he would no longer be the golden child. As snow continued falling around us, Emma handed me a flash drive. Everything is here. I stared at it. A tiny piece of plastic, yet it potentially contained answers I had been searching for years. Inside the mansion, laughter continued. Champagne glasses clinked. Music played. Nobody knew a storm was about to hit. Nobody knew the biggest secret of the evening hadn't been revealed yet. And nobody knew that before midnight, the entire family would discover who had been sabotaging me all along. I looked at the flash drive, then toward the mansion, then back at Emma. My pulse raced, because deep down, I already knew what I was going to find. And I knew Michael was about to face a truth he could no longer hide. I stood on the balcony staring at the flash drive in my hand. Inside the mansion, the party continued. People laughed. Music played. Champagne flowed. Nobody knew that in a few minutes, everything was about to change, especially Michael. I walked into a private office inside the mansion and plugged the flash drive into a computer. The first file opened, then the second, then the third. With every document, my heart sank deeper. Emma was right, completely right. For years, Michael had secretly contacted investors, clients, and business partners. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to slow my growth, enough to damage opportunities, enough to hurt. One email stopped me cold. It had been sent 4 years earlier, to one of the biggest investors I had ever approached, the same investor who unexpectedly rejected my company. Michael had written, "Daniel is ambitious, but I wouldn't trust him with your money." I stared at the screen. My hands shook. Not because I was angry, because I was hurt, deeply hurt. This wasn't business competition. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was betrayal. From my own brother. The person who should have supported me. The person who should have wanted me to succeed. For several minutes I sat alone, thinking, remembering, trying to understand why. Then I realized something. This had never been about me. It was about Michael, his insecurity, his fear, his need to remain the favorite son. A knock interrupted my thoughts. It was Emma. Everyone is gathering for the countdown. I nodded. It was almost midnight. The perfect moment. Not for revenge, for truth. Back inside the main ballroom, guests gathered around the stage. A giant clock displayed the final minutes of the year. 5 minutes until midnight. 5 minutes until everything changed. My uncle stepped onto the stage. He smiled confidently, prepared to deliver his annual New Year's speech. The same speech he gave every year. The speech everyone expected. But before he could begin, I walked toward him. The room became quiet. My uncle looked surprised. Daniel? I calmly took the microphone. Then I turned toward the crowd. Hundreds of eyes focused on me. I wasn't planning to speak tonight. The room remained silent. But something happened that changed my mind. My mother looked nervous. Michael looked worried. Very worried. I continued. Tonight has been interesting. A few guests laughed softly. But before the year ends, I think the truth deserves a chance to speak. Immediately, Michael's face turned white. Because he knew. Deep down, he knew. I connected my laptop to the large screen behind the stage. The first email appeared. Then another. Then another. Gasps spread across the room. People leaned forward, reading every word, watching every piece of evidence. No dramatic accusations, no shouting, no insults, just facts. Simple facts. And facts are powerful. The room watched in stunned silence as years of sabotage appeared on the screen. Emails, messages, conversations, attempts to block deals, attempts to ruin opportunities, attempts to hold me back. Finally, I displayed the sender's name, Michael Carter. The room froze. My mother covered her mouth. My uncle looked shocked. Several guests stared directly at Michael, waiting, hoping there was some explanation, but there wasn't. For nearly 30 seconds, nobody spoke. Then one of the investors finally asked, Michael, is this real? Michael looked around the room, searching for help, searching for an escape, searching for anything. There was nothing. Finally, he lowered his head and quietly said, Yes. The room exploded with whispers. My mother burst into tears. My uncle sat down heavily. The shock on their faces was impossible to hide, because for years they had believed Michael was the successful one, the trustworthy one, the reliable one. Now they were learning something very different. Michael looked toward me, his eyes filled with regret. I was jealous. The room became silent again. I thought if Daniel succeeded, nobody would notice me anymore. His voice cracked. I was afraid. Nobody celebrated. Nobody cheered. Because honestly, it was sad. Very sad. A lifetime of insecurity had led him to destroy relationships and opportunities. Then something unexpected happened. I walked toward him. The room watched carefully. Many people expected anger. Many people expected humiliation. Many people expected revenge. Instead, I offered him my hand. Michael looked confused. Everyone looked confused. Even I surprised myself. But I understood something important. Success had already won. I didn't need revenge. You hurt me, I said quietly. You hurt me more than you'll ever know. Michael lowered his eyes. But I'm not carrying this into the new year. The room became completely silent, because forgiveness is sometimes more shocking than revenge. At that exact moment, the giant clock began counting down. 10, 9, 8. Guests joined together. 7, 6, 5. My family stood beside me, for the first time in years, not divided, together. 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. The ballroom erupted with cheers. Fireworks exploded outside. Music filled the room. People hugged each other. Champagne glasses clinked. A new year had begun. Later that night, my mother approached me. Her eyes were red from crying. I was wrong. Her voice trembled. I spent years believing I knew who you were. She paused. But I never took the time to actually see you. For the first time in years, I saw genuine regret in her eyes. Not excuses, not pride, regret. She hugged me, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Because some wounds heal through conversations, others heal through understanding. As the party slowly ended, I stepped outside. Snow continued falling. The city lights stretched across the horizon. Beautiful, peaceful, hopeful. I thought about everything that had happened. The rejection, the judgment, the years of being underestimated, the message telling me not to come. And suddenly, I smiled. Because if I had listened, if I had stayed home, none of this would have happened. Sometimes people underestimate you because they only remember who you were. They cannot see who you're becoming. And that's okay, because eventually, results speak louder than opinions. If you enjoyed this emotional story about family betrayal, success, and redemption, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And remember, the people who doubt you today may be the same people who are shocked by your success tomorrow.